When you hear the word cherub, what is the very first thing that comes to your mind? You are probably imagining a cute, chubby, winged baby with bright, rosy red cheeks. You picture them floating lazily on a fluffy white cloud, strumming a tiny golden harp. For centuries, Renaissance artists, classical painters, and modern pop culture have sold us this comforting image. They have conditioned us to believe in this adorable, harmless image of heaven's sweetest angels. But I am here to tell you that they completely and utterly lied to you. They lied to protect human sanity from the overwhelming, terrifying reality of the cosmic order. In the oldest ancient texts, the cherubim were absolutely not floating, harmless babies. They were not gentle messengers bringing good news, and they certainly were not cute or approachable. They were heaven's absolute first line of defense, serving as God's elite cosmic enforcers. They are described as colossal, terrifying entities made of fire, burning bronze, and pure, unfiltered power. Before humanity even existed, before the foundations of the earth were ever formed in the void, a massive, complex, and deeply structured cosmic order was established in the heavenly realms. At the very top of this grand hierarchy, stationed closest to the ultimate throne of creation, were the legendary cherubim, standing as the eternal vanguard of the almighty divine presence. But this raises a massive, lingering question. Why did an omnipotent creator need defenders? What, or exactly who, were these terrifying entities protecting the heavenly throne from? Today, we are stripping away centuries of mistranslations, historical softening, and artistic censorship. We are going to finally uncover the true, unfiltered lore of the biblical and esoteric cherubim. We will deeply explore the ancient texts, from the vivid, terrifying book of Ezekiel all the way to the forgotten, lost apocrypha of the mysterious book of Enoch. We will introduce you to the 12 original, elite guardians of the divine realm. We will uncover their terrifying, mind-bending anatomy that defies all human understanding of physics. We will delve into their ancient, universe-shattering wars fought in the dark void of space. And we will explore the devastating betrayal of the one cherub who nearly brought heaven to its knees. Stick around, because by the time we reach the end of this deep dive, you will absolutely never look at an angel the same way ever again. And you will finally understand why, every single time a true angel appears in human history, their very first words to terrified humans always have to be, "Do not be afraid." To truly understand the cherubim, we have to deeply analyze the most detailed, mind-bending eyewitness account. We are looking at the most spectacular and terrifying encounter ever recorded in human history. The year is roughly 593 BC, a time of massive political upheaval and crushing exile. The prophet Ezekiel is exiled near the muddy banks of the Chebar River in Babylon. He is weary, broken, and desperate, when suddenly the dark sky above him violently tears open. Ezekiel does not see a choir of floating babies descending to offer him comfort. Instead, he sees a massive, terrifying storm of fire and flashing lightning rushing toward him. From the swirling center of these blinding flames emerge 4 colossal living creatures. Their appearance is so completely alien, so deeply incomprehensible to the mortal human mind, that Ezekiel struggles desperately to find the human vocabulary to describe what he is seeing. Let us carefully break down the exact biblical anatomy of a true, fully formed cherub. They possess the general, upright form of a man, but that is where the similarities completely end. Their massive legs are completely straight, ending not in traditional human feet with toes, but in the glowing, heavy hooves of a calf, shining like polished, molten brass. They do not walk step by step. Instead, they move instantly, like sudden flashes of lightning. But it is their terrifying heads that completely shatter all bounds of human comprehension. Each individual cherub possesses 4 distinct, fully formed faces looking in 4 different directions. Looking straight forward, they possess the solemn, intelligent face of a human being. On the right side of their head, they bear the fierce, terrifying face of a roaring lion. On the left side, they possess the heavy, powerful face of a massive ox. And in the very back of their head, they have the sharp, predatory face of an eagle. In ancient Near Eastern symbolism, these 4 specific faces are not just random animal choices. They represent the absolute apex of all earthly creation in their respective domains of power. Humanity rules creation. Wild beasts rule the jungle. Domestic livestock rule the fields. And eagles rule the sky. Each cherub is equipped with 4 massive, powerful wings that stretch out from their bodies. 2 wings stretch upward, perfectly connecting with the glowing wings of the cherub next to them. This connection creates an unbreakable, unified, and impenetrable wall of vibrating divine energy. The other 2 wings fold downward to respectfully cover their massive bodies in a posture of deep reverence. And hiding quietly beneath these massive, heavy wings, the completely normal hands of a man. But a cherub does not travel through the dimensions of the universe completely alone. Beside each and every one of them hovers a secondary, equally terrifying celestial entity. These are known as the Ophanim, or more simply translated, the wheels of heaven. These are towering, massive, intersecting gyroscopic rings glowing intensely with the deep green colour of beryl, and the massive, spinning rims of these colossal, multidimensional wheels. They are completely and entirely covered in hundreds of unblinking, living, darting eyes. Wherever the spirit of the cherub decides it wants to go in the universe, the terrifying wheels instantly move right alongside them, perfectly synchronizing without ever having to turn. Together, these complex, intertwined entities form the living, breathing chariot of the Almighty God. They serve as the living, mechanical engine of absolute, undeniable divine authority. When they move, Ezekiel describes the deafening sound of their massive wings beating the air. He compares it to the thundering roar of rushing, violent floodwaters crashing down a mountain. He says it sounds like the booming voice of the Almighty himself speaking from the clouds. It sounds like the chaotic, deafening roar of a massive, heavily armed cosmic army marching into battle. This is the true, unfiltered, historically accurate representation of a biblical cherub, a weaponized, multidimensional being of unyielding, completely unstoppable cosmic power. To understand why a loving God would create such terrifying, intimidating entities in the first place, we have to look closely at the complex, structured hierarchy of the heavenly realms. Angelology, which is the deep theological study of angelic beings, traditionally divides the celestial host into 3 spheres. These spheres, or choirs, dictate the specific roles and proximity to the divine throne. In the lowest, 3rd sphere, you have the standard angels and the highly ranked archangels. These are the typical messengers who cross the veil to actively interact with fragile humanity. In the middle, 2nd sphere, you have the cosmic governors known as the powers, virtues, and dominions. These entities actively manage the physical laws of the universe, keeping the planets and stars in motion. But at the very top, in the exclusive 1st sphere, stationed completely closest to the unbearable heat, you find the terrifying Seraphim, the bizarre thrones, and the powerful, unyielding cherubim. The actual word cherub heavily derives from the ancient, historical Hebrew root word keruv. While modern linguistic scholars still debate its exact, precise etymological origins in the ancient world, many trace it back to ancient Akkadian or Assyrian words meaning to loudly bless or to fiercely guard. In the ancient Near East, massive human empires and kings fiercely guarded their royal palaces. They built Lamassu massive, towering stone statues of winged bulls with the bearded heads of human men. The biblical cherubim are the actual living cosmic reality that those ancient human statues were desperately trying to copy. But this brings us back to the ultimate question. What exactly are they guarding? If God is truly an all-powerful, all-knowing being, why does he require a team of celestial bodyguards? Theological scholars, ancient rabbis, and highly esoteric texts strongly suggest a fascinating, terrifying theory. The cherubim are not actually designed to protect God from some kind of outside cosmic threat. They are actually designed to protect the rest of fragile creation from the raw power of God. The sheer, unfiltered, unmasked presence of the divine creator is constantly described as a consuming, raging fire. It is a spiritual energy so absolute, so devastatingly pure, and so unimaginably heavy that absolutely anything unholy, imperfect, or mortal would instantly and violently vaporize in its direct presence. The cherubim act as the universe's ultimate, unbreakable cosmic containment field. They actively filter the blinding divine radiation so that the rest of the universe can safely exist. They rigidly maintain the strict, necessary boundary between the infinite creator and the finite creation. But they also serve a deeply important, terrifying, secondary purpose in the grand cosmic design. They are the ultimate, unbending enforcers of divine, absolute cosmic justice across all dimensions. When the fundamental rules of the universe are dangerously broken by spiritual or mortal beings, the cherubim are the specific entities heavily dispatched to violently balance the cosmic scales. And to properly execute this massive responsibility, heaven requires a highly specialized, elite vanguard. While the widely accepted canonical Bible mainly speaks of the cherubim as a collective, unified choir, esoteric traditions, ancient Kabbalistic lore, and banned apocryphal texts like the Book of Enoch dive much deeper. In these incredibly ancient, mystical, and sometimes forbidden spiritual traditions, the massive choir of the cherubim is commanded directly by a vanguard of 12 elite entities. These 12 specific angels represent the ultimate, perfect zodiac of heaven, the absolute number of divine governance. Let us open the dusty, forbidden texts and properly meet the 12 defenders of the throne. Number 1 on this terrifying roster is the mighty Cherubim. He is widely known across ancient texts as the absolute prince of the cherubim. Ancient mystical traditions explicitly name him as the supreme, unquestioned commander of this specific choir. He is the master general, the ultimate tactician, the one who orchestrates the complex movements of the divine chariot. Number 2 is the incredibly bizarre and deeply fascinating entity known as Ophanim. While he is sometimes classified as belonging to an entirely separate class of angel called the Thrones, deep esoteric lore closely and permanently ties Ophanim's existence to the ranks of the cherubim. He is specifically known as the Lord of the Wheels, the entity directly responsible for the terrifying Ophanim. He actively commands the massive, many-eyed gyroscopic rings that physically carry the weight of the throne. He represents the ever-watching, completely inescapable, and highly terrifying vision of divine justice. Number 3 is the swift and incredibly powerful angel known as Rikbeel. He holds the prestigious and vital title of the guardian of the divine chariot. If the rest of the mighty cherubim act as the raw engine of the celestial vehicle, then Rikbeel is the cosmic driver, steering the massive construct through the void. He perfectly navigates the twisting, multidimensional pathways of the spiritual universe, allowing the overwhelming presence of God to safely cross from the highest heaven into the lower realms of creation. Number 4 is the sleek, mysterious, and deeply secretive entity named Zophiel. His name directly and ominously translates from ancient tongues to mean the spy of God. Described as swift-winged, highly perceptive, and absolutely relentless in his holy duties, Zophiel is the ultimate intelligence gatherer of the elite cherubic ranks. He is the specific entity secretly sent to silently observe the deepest, darkest, most hidden corners of the universe, bringing deeply buried secrets and hidden truths right back to the foot of the heavenly throne. Number 5 is the incredibly famous and deeply terrifying angel known as Jophiel. His name translates to the beauty of God, but you must absolutely not let that gentle name fool you. Jophiel is widely and historically believed in apocryphal lore to be the specific, highly lethal cherub who was personally assigned to fiercely guard the pathway to the legendary Tree of Life. He is the very one who violently drove a terrified humanity out of the Garden of Eden, swinging a massive, terrifying, flaming sword that continuously turns and burns in every possible direction. Number 6 on the ancient roster is the heavy, foundational entity known as Gubal. He is very often heavily referenced in deep, complex Kabbalistic texts and mystical Jewish traditions. This specific cherub is deeply associated with the raw, heavy, fundamental elements of physical creation. He acts as the ultimate cosmic architect, actively maintaining the absolute physical laws of the universe. He enforces the invisible rules of gravity, dark matter, and cosmic physics that hold the swirling galaxies together. Number 7 is an incredibly familiar name that might deeply surprise you: Gabriel. Yes, the very same Gabriel widely known in popular culture as a standard archangel. While traditionally known as a messenger, complex pseudo-Dionysian texts and incredibly ancient lore very often place Gabriel's true rank firmly within the elite, burning ranks of the cherubim. As the ultimate, trusted messenger of catastrophic, world-ending news and holy revelations, Gabriel operates at a massive level of spiritual power that sits far beyond standard angelic messengers. He essentially serves as the loud, booming, and authoritative voice of the entire cherubic choir. Number 8 is the grim, dark-winged, and incredibly terrifying angel known as Uriel. His name ominously translates to the Fire of God, a title he fiercely lives up to. The highly descriptive Book of Enoch specifically details Uriel as a relentless watcher over Tartarus, the absolute deepest, darkest, and most punishing abyss of the spiritual underworld. He is the heavily armed cherub who personally guards the dark prison of the fallen, rebellious angels. Uriel is the ultimate celestial warden, the unyielding executioner, and the terrifying bringer of earthly cataclysms. Number 9 brings us to a deeply tragic figure known as Uzzah. This is exactly where the ancient heavenly lore begins to get incredibly dark and morally complex. Uzzah was an incredibly powerful, highly respected cherub stationed very close to the divine throne. But his deep, lingering curiosity about the fragile, mortal realm eventually became his complete undoing. In mystical traditions, he was one of the primary entities who openly questioned humanity's ultimate worth. He dangerously teetered on the very edge of the great heavenly rebellion, nearly falling into total darkness. Number 10 is another deeply tragic and widely known fallen entity named Azazel. He is very closely linked to the mysterious group of angels known as the Watchers. Azazel was originally a highly decorated cherub, possessing a profound, unmatched level of cosmic wisdom. But he ultimately and tragically fell completely from divine grace and was cast down to the earth. Ancient texts say he is the exact angel who taught fragile humanity the dark secrets of weapon making. He taught them how to forge swords, shields, and armor, bringing the destructive power of heaven down to the dirt. Number 11 is the highly mysterious, perfectly balanced entity simply named Cherub. He serves as the absolute, definitive namesake of the entire elite celestial order. Cherub is the pure, entirely undistilled, and perfect embodiment of everything the choir represents. He does not typically act, speak, or intervene in the standard affairs of the universe. He simply is. He exists as a living, breathing, unmoving barrier of absolute divine protection, standing eternally and silently at the massive glowing gate of the legendary seventh heaven. And finally, we arrive at the infamous, deeply terrifying number 12. He was historically the most powerful, the most breathtakingly beautiful, and the most devastating cherub ever created. He is the one whose holy name was permanently and violently erased from the celestial roster. He was formerly known by the prestigious title, the Anointed Cherub that covereth. His original name, before the Great Fall, was the Morning Star. We know him today as Lucifer. To truly understand the absolute greatest, most devastating war in the entire history of the cosmos, you must first deeply understand who Lucifer actually was before his terrifying fall from grace. Modern pop culture constantly paints him as the dark, ruling king of a burning underworld, depicting him as a bizarre, red-skinned, horned demon wielding a sharp metal pitchfork. But the canonical Bible and ancient texts actually tell a very different, far more tragic and terrifying story. In the book of Ezekiel, specifically chapter 28, God speaks directly and clearly to the exact origin of Satan. The text reads, "You were in Eden, the glorious garden of God. Every precious stone perfectly adorned you." It lists carnelian, chrysolite, emerald, glowing topaz, heavy onyx, jasper, beautiful lapis lazuli, turquoise, and beryl. The verse continues with the most important, defining detail of his entire existence. "You were explicitly anointed as a guardian cherub, for so I specifically ordained and created you." Lucifer was absolutely not just a standard, run-of-the-mill messenger angel serving in the lower choirs. He was a massive, terrifying, incredibly powerful cherub of the absolute highest possible ranking. In fact, the text emphasizes that he was the specific anointed cherub of the entire heavenly host. The highly specific word anointed strongly implies that he was the absolute chosen one of the angels. He was the shining crown jewel of the entire defensive line, protecting the divine presence. He was stationed directly and intimately over the very throne of the Almighty God himself. He possessed a massive, unparalleled level of raw cosmic power, deep intelligence, and blinding beauty. He completely outmatched almost every single other created being in the entire known and unknown universe. But this absolute, completely unrivaled perfection ultimately became the exact catalyst for his terrifying undoing. The ancient texts explicitly state that his once pure heart became intensely proud on account of his unmatched beauty. He completely corrupted his ancient, profound wisdom purely because of his blinding, intoxicating splendor. Lucifer looked closely at the massive, glowing throne he was specifically created to humbly protect. And in that dark moment, he made a completely fatal, universe-altering, and deeply arrogant calculation. He decided that he absolutely no longer wanted to simply guard the throne like a loyal servant. He decided that he desperately and violently wanted to sit right on top of it. This dark, swelling ambition officially sparked the very first, most destructive cosmic war in existence. Lucifer successfully and tragically managed to convince exactly 1/3 of the entire angelic host to abandon their holy posts and violently join his massive, unprecedented rebellion against the Creator. But you have to deeply remember exactly who he was foolishly choosing to fight against. He was a highly trained cherub, which meant the specific, elite entities specifically tasked with stopping him were his very own brothers in arms, the remaining loyal cherubim of the heavenly vanguard. the loyal, unbending cherubim, fiercely fighting directly alongside the legendary Archangel Michael, engaged in a catastrophic, deeply violent war that violently shook the very foundations of the universe. This was absolutely not a medieval human battle fought with simple iron swords and wooden shields. It was a terrifying, incomprehensible battle of advanced, multidimensional physics and raw, unfiltered cosmic power. It was pure, blinding divine energy and holy light, violently colliding with sudden, suffocating, and absolute darkness. In the end, despite the massive casualties and cosmic destruction, the holy defenses perfectly held their ground. Lucifer, the once glorious anointed cherub, was violently stripped of his holy position and rank. He was violently and permanently cast out of the highest heavenly realm, like a terrifying bolt of lightning. The prestigious 12th slot of the elite cherubim roster was left permanently and deeply empty. It remains to this day as a permanent, burning scar on the otherwise perfect divine roster. And from that deeply tragic day forward, the remaining cherubim were forever fundamentally changed. They were absolutely no longer just ceremonial, peaceful guards standing quietly in a perfect paradise. They became highly active, deeply hardened, and incredibly lethal soldiers of a universe actively at war. The terrible, devastating fallout of Lucifer's great rebellion eventually and tragically spilled over into a brand new realm. It violently crashed down onto the newly formed, pristine physical planet we know as Earth. When the very first humans, Adam and Eve, were cleverly and maliciously manipulated by the fallen cherub, they were tragically tricked into openly breaking the one absolute divine law of the garden. Because of this deeply fatal error, the unbending rules of the universe demanded immediate, severe action. Humanity absolutely had to be immediately and permanently exiled from the safety of the Garden of Eden. This was specifically done to prevent them from eating from the glowing, magical tree of life. If they had eaten from it, they would have become completely immortal while trapped in a deeply corrupted state. To ensure they could never ever return to the garden and make this catastrophic mistake, God absolutely did not just build a simple stone wall or a heavy wooden gate. He immediately deployed his absolute most elite, terrifying, and unyielding cosmic enforcers to lock it down. The book of Genesis, chapter 3, verse 24, clearly states the terrifying historical reality of this moment. It says, "After he violently drove the man out, he placed on the east side of the Garden of Eden massive cherubim and a terrifying flaming sword, violently flashing back and forth, to completely guard the hidden way to the ancient tree of life." You must pay very close attention to the specific, terrifying detail provided right here. It describes a heavily flaming sword that constantly flashes back and forth without stopping. In the original ancient Hebrew text, the specific phrasing implies something far more terrifying than a standard blade. It implies a weapon that actively, simultaneously turns and burns in every single possible direction at once. It is absolutely not just a standard medieval metal weapon that happens to be covered in hot fire. It is an impenetrable, completely lethal, multidimensional, cosmic barrier made of pure, living plasma and divine fire. The towering, terrifying cherubim were permanently stationed right at the east gate of Eden. They violently brought the terrifying, overwhelming reality of the highest heavenly throne room, crashing directly down into the muddy, dusty dirt of the physical human earth. And according to highly respected ancient lore and deeply held historical traditions, they absolutely never left. They stood perfectly still, fiercely guarding over the gateway to Eden for countless long centuries. They formed an unblinking, entirely unsleeping, and completely unbreakable wall of absolute divine judgment. They perfectly ensured that humanity could never, ever physically force their way back into the paradise they lost. They served as a constant, looming, terrifying visual reminder to to all of early primitive humanity, that the easy, peaceful way back to the presence of God was completely and permanently closed. Countless centuries later, fragile humanity had tragically fallen deeply back into darkness, sin, and chaos. God finally decided to completely re-establish a direct, powerful connection with the physical, mortal world. He chose to do this specifically through the wandering, desert-dwelling tribes of the ancient Israelites. But you have to deeply remember the massive, lingering cosmic problem with this entire divine plan. God's raw, unfiltered presence is actively and constantly described as a terrifying, consuming cosmic fire. If God were to simply step down and physically dwell openly on the unprotected surface of the earth, his overwhelming, pure holiness would instantly and violently obliterate the entire fragile planet into dust. He desperately needed a highly specific, magically constructed, and perfectly insulated containment vessel. Enter the most famous, powerful, and deeply mysterious artifact in human history, the Ark of the Covenant. God gave the prophet Moses incredibly specific, highly detailed, and uncompromising architectural instructions. He was told to build a perfectly measured box out of strong, enduring acacia wood. He was then commanded to completely and perfectly overlay the entire wooden box with pure hammered gold, and right on top of its heavy lid, which was ominously and beautifully called the mercy seat, Moses was strictly commanded to forge 2 massive, perfectly symmetrical golden statues of the cherubim. They were to be positioned perfectly facing each other, looking downward toward the golden lid. Their massive golden wings were to be spread upward and forward, perfectly overshadowing the holy cover. This specific, highly detailed design was absolutely not just meant for pretty, artistic decoration in a tent. This was highly advanced, deeply powerful, and completely lethal multidimensional cosmic technology. God explicitly told Moses, there, directly above the cover, resting perfectly between the 2 golden cherubim that are stationed securely over the Ark of the Covenant law, I will personally meet with you. These heavy, solid gold statues acted perfectly as a massive, spiritual grounding rod for divine energy. They successfully created a highly localized, heavily filtered, and deeply protected miniature throne right on Earth. The very specific, empty space, perfectly resting right between the outstretched wings of the golden cherubim, instantly became the most unimaginably dangerous, highly charged, and lethal square foot of space on the entire planet. Because the true cherubim are the eternal, unyielding defenders of the heavenly throne room, the Golden Ark essentially functioned as a highly weaponized, heavily armed piece of heaven on earth. Wherever the massive, heavy gold ark was carried by the priests, the deadly defensive power went with it. When the enemy Philistines foolishly captured the golden box and placed it in their pagan temples, their entire massive cities were instantly struck with horrific, devastating, and entirely unnatural physical plagues. When an Israelite man named Uzzah accidentally reached out and casually touched the ark to steady it, the raw, unfiltered, massive surge of pure divine energy instantly and violently killed him on the spot. The cherubim absolutely do not ever negotiate with mortals, kings, or even the highest earthly priests. They absolutely do not feel any sense of pity, remorse, hesitation, or gentle human emotion. They strictly and blindly follow the absolute, deeply unbending cosmic laws of complex divine physics. To arrogantly touch the holy throne without explicit, direct divine permission is to instantly invite complete annihilation. Humanity has a very deep, lingering, psychological habit of trying to domesticate the very things that terrify us. We took the most formidable, reality-bending, and completely overwhelming cosmic entities in the entire known universe, and we foolishly turned them into chubby, harmless, floating babies printed on cheap Valentine's Day cards. We safely painted right over the terrifying, unblinking eyes, the massive gyroscopic wheels, and the raging fire. We completely erase the deeply intimidating four faces of the powerful beasts from our modern cultural memory. But the incredibly ancient, dusty, and deeply respected texts absolutely refuse to ever let us completely forget. The 12 cherubim, whether you personally choose to view them as literal, historical, breathing entities, or whether you strictly view them as profound, deeply metaphorical representations of the untamable, raw forces of the universe. They constantly remind us of a very harsh, deeply humbling, and entirely inescapable cosmic truth. The vast, expansive universe is absolutely not a totally safe, completely soft, or harmless place. It is a deeply terrifying realm, built on absolute, unbending physical laws and heavy spiritual consequences. It is heavily guarded by massive, incomprehensible forces that actively operate on a terrifying cosmic scale, that we, as fragile, finite human beings, absolutely cannot even begin to properly fathom or understand. So, the very next time you step outside at night and look deeply up at the countless glowing stars, or the very next time you feel a massive, heavy roll of violent thunder that violently shakes the foundations of your home, I want you to pause, take a deep breath, and remember the terrifying reality of the cherubim. Remember the living, breathing, heavily weaponized, and entirely unstoppable cosmic engine of the highest heaven. Remember the fierce, unyielding, and eternally vigilant guardians of the ultimate cosmic threshold, because whether you truly believe in them or completely dismiss them as mere ancient mythology, they are definitely out there, standing perfectly still in the dark, watching the unfolding universe. They are constantly watching the actions of humanity, silently moving through the unseen dimensions and eternally guarding the throne. If you have successfully made it this incredibly far into this deep, terrifying, and complex historical dive, you are definitely part of the rare, intellectual minority that actively seeks out the unfiltered truth, hidden completely beneath thick layers of centuries of intentionally sanitized history and modern religious domestication. Please hit the like button right now to actively appease the unseen, complex algorithm of this platform, and strictly make sure to hit subscribe to the channel so you absolutely never ever miss another massive deep dive into the absolute darkest, most fascinating and deeply hidden lore of our world. Until we meet next time, please try to stay endlessly curious about the hidden universe around you, and above all else, deeply remember the very first rule of encountering the divine: do not be afraid.